You know those tiny little things you do every day? The ones you forget about almost instantly? What if I told you they could echo out and shape your life, not just for this lifetime, but for many, many more to come? Well, it's a wild idea, and it's right at the heart of an ancient collection of stories we're going to dive into today. So, where are we getting all this from? It's a text called the Sūtra on the original cause of the Buddha's 500 disciples telling their own stories. Now, don't worry, this isn't some dense philosophical lecture. It's actually a collection of really personal stories from enlightened people, explaining, exactly how they got to where they are. Okay, so picture this. The scene is set at the mythical Anavatapta Lake. This place is magical. They say if you drink its water, you can remember all of your past lives. And it's here that the Buddha has gathered with 500 of his top followers, all of them fully enlightened beings called arhats. The Buddha looks around at this incredible group of people and sees a perfect teaching moment. He knows that every single person there has a powerful, unique story that brought them to this ultimate point of freedom. So he asks them a very simple, very direct question. Tell me the story of the past actions that led you here. And what they share in response is just this incredible series of tales all about the law of cause and effect, or as you probably know it, karma. All right, let's start with the good stuff, right? The first set of stories shows how these seemingly tiny acts of goodness can plant the seeds for absolutely extraordinary rewards way down the line. So get this, one disciple talks about a past life where he just saw a dusty temple and, decided to sweep it clean. Just for that one simple act of service, he was reborn for many lifetimes with this beautiful glowing complexion and a mind that was totally clear. It's like the external cleanliness he created was mirrored inside him. Then there's another disciple. He tells a story about how he saw a stupa, a Buddhist monument, and with a really pure heart, he just offered a single flower he'd found. And the effect? It's just astonishing. It led to hundreds of centuries of being reborn in blissful heavenly realms, just from one flower? And you hear this kind of thing over and over in the text. The scale is it's mind-boggling. A momentary act, but with a pure intention, leads to a reward that you can barely even wrap your head around. And that's the key, right? The power isn't in how big the action is, but in the purity of the thought behind it. But, this law of cause and effect, it cuts both ways. The Sutra also shares these really intense stories where just fleeting mistakes, tiny missteps, created these echoes of suffering that went on for ages. One disciple admits that in a past life, he saw his parents eating, and for just a split second, he had this selfish, jealous thought, kinda wishing they weren't eating so he could have more for himself. That one fleeting, ugly thought resulted in him being reborn for lifetimes with this painful, gnawing hunger that could never be satisfied. And then there's this other story. A man saw a monk and just out of pure spite made a cruel comment about how he looked, calling him ugly. And the consequence for that one nasty comment? He was reborn for 500 lifetimes in a row as ugly, sick, and poor, constantly being looked down on by everyone. Just let that sink in for a second. Not one lifetime, not 10, 500. For a single harsh word that was probably spoken and forgotten in a moment, it created a debt that took centuries of misery to finally pay off. But this one might be the most extreme example. There was a king. An ascetic confessed to him that he stole some water because he was thirsty. The king ordered him to be detained and then just forgot about him for 6 days. For that act of negligence, the king spent a staggering 60,000 years in a hell realm. And as a final bit of karmic cleanup, in his final life as the disciple Rahula, he had to spend 6 years in his mother's womb. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sure, this applies to regular people, but an enlightened being like the Buddha, he must be beyond all this, right? Well, this is where this sutra gets really powerful, because it turns out no one is exempt from this law, not even him. Yeah, to really drive this point home, the Buddha just lays his own history bare for everyone to see. He explains that even the physical pain and the challenges he faced in his final, enlightened life, they were all direct results of his own actions in lifetimes long, long ago. I mean, just look at this breakdown. It's so direct, because in a past life, he had slandered someone. In his final life, he was falsely accused by others. Past violence he committed led to a physical injury when his own cousin tried to kill him with a rock. Past cruelty to an animal
led to him suffering from chronic, painful headaches. And because he once mocked another Buddhist followers, he himself had to eat horse feed for 3 months during a famine.
So after all these stories, the good, the bad, even the Buddha's own, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it all boils down to this really clear, impartial principle. The most crucial thing to get here is that karma, at least as it's laid out in these stories, isn't about some cosmic judge in the sky handing out rewards and punishments. It's described more like a law of nature. You know, like gravity. Every action, every word, even every single thought creates a ripple, an effect. It's totally impartial and it applies to absolutely everyone.
So the real takeaway from these ancient stories is this incredibly powerful metaphor. Every single thing we do, every word we type, every little choice we make, it's like planting a seed. An act of kindness, that's a seed for a future harvest of happiness. A harsh word, that's a seed for a future harvest of suffering. The text is basically telling us we aren't just living our lives, we're actively farming our own future, moment by moment. And that leaves us with a final, really personal question, doesn't it? If every little action echoes into the future, creating the reality we're going to live in, then what seeds are you planting today?